Right now, some families cannot drink their own tap water. And this is the richest country the world has ever built. Others will skip the doctor this year, not because the clinic is far, because the visit costs too much. And some people work full-time, earn a real paycheck, and still lose their home. Sit with that for a moment. This is not a faraway place. This is not some struggling nation on the other side of the world. This is here. And here is the strange part. The money exists. It always has. This country holds more billionaires than any other on Earth. So the real question is not where the wealth went. The question is where it stops. Because a line runs through this country. On one side, everything works the way it should. On the other side, the same basic things quietly fall apart. And that line runs closer to ordinary people than most of us think. People who followed every rule they were given. Once you see where it runs, you cannot unsee it. So watch for one thing as we go. The first thing that breaks is not your bank account. It is something quieter, and it hides in plain sight. We will get there. For now, let me show you the line. Start with water. Almost nobody thinks to question it. Morning comes. You shuffle over to the kitchen. You reach out and open the faucet. Simple. But picture the water running out brown. Your first thought is simple. A pipe burst somewhere nearby. Something temporary. You call the utility, buy a few bottles, and wait for it to clear. That is a reasonable reaction. Now picture it never clearing. Not that day. Not the next. Not the week after that. Picture brown water as just another ordinary Tuesday. And Wednesday. And every Tuesday that follows. This is the everyday reality across pockets of rural Appalachia. Across tribal lands in the Southwest. In aging neighborhoods tucked inside cities in many states. Some homes never touch the tap at all. They buy their water by the case. They haul jugs in from somewhere else across town. Some depend on private wells that were never once tested. And these people are not being careless or uninformed. They learned the hard way, over years. The water in their own pipes simply cannot be trusted. Here is the part you cannot wave away. The Environmental Protection Agency has been blunt about it. Millions of Americans rely on water systems that are far too old to work. Many of the pipes carrying water into homes today were laid 50, 60, 70 years ago. Some of them are older than that. Replacing all of it would cost hundreds of billions of dollars spread across decades. For a big city, that is a brutal bill to face. For a small town with a shrinking tax base, it can feel completely impossible. So the repairs get delayed. The projects get shelved. And people keep drinking what they have, because nobody has offered them another option. But the pipes are not the part that stays with me. It is what happens inside people's heads. Let a problem run long enough with no fix in sight and the mind quietly refiles it. What once felt like an emergency slowly becomes the weather. Kids grow up believing brown water is normal because for them it always was. They never knew a tap you could trust. That is how a crisis disappears. It stops looking like one. You stop calling it a crisis. Calling it a crisis assumes that someone is coming to fix it. In the comfortable parts of the same nation, nobody gives water a thought. You open the tap. You fill the glass. You get on with life. But in poorer or isolated places, filling a glass has become a decision. People actually weigh it. And that small hesitation, repeated across 1,000 mornings, teaches you something underneath words. It teaches you that the ground beneath your own life is not quite solid. When the most fundamental promise a home makes falls apart, a larger question surfaces. If that one thing fails you, what is left to trust? Now step into a different kitchen. There is a bad shoulder here, and it has ached for months. Nothing sharp. Just a deep, grinding pain that wrecks sleep and shrinks what a person can lift. This person knows they should get it checked. They have not. Not because there is no clinic. There is one only 20 minutes away. Not because they fail to grasp the danger. They understand it completely. They have not gone because of the total. The visit, the scan, the follow-ups, the pills that might come after. Even with insurance, the total lands beyond what their budget can take at the moment. So the visit keeps getting pushed. They manage around it. They hope the pain quietly fades. This is not a rare story at all. KFF, one of the most trusted health research groups in the country, finds something stark. About a third of American adults have skipped care they needed, purely because of the cost. Not distance. Not ignorance. Cost. Now hold that against a single number. The United States spends close to 18% of everything it produces on health care. That is more than almost any wealthy nation on Earth. The hospitals are here. The specialists are here. The scanners and the machines are all here. By world standards, this system is enormous and very richly funded. And yet, for millions of people, it might as well sit behind a pane of glass. It rarely announces itself as an emergency. It creeps in through small things. A tooth that gets ignored because dental work is expensive and Medicare will not even cover it. A screening skipped for one more year. A symptom you decide you can live with, right up until the day you cannot. What comes next is entirely predictable. Small problems left alone grow into big ones. Big problems cost far more and they hurt far worse. The person who waited over a bill now faces a serious condition, and a much larger bill than the one they were dodging. And there is a second wound underneath the money that the numbers always miss. Many people who walk away from care are not only broke, they are tired of not being heard. They are tired of leaving with a prescription instead of an answer. One of them finally got a doctor to sign a note, just so they could rest without losing the job. And the gap keeps widening at the edges that nobody watches. Dental goes first because it gets treated like a luxury instead of health. So people lose teeth they never had to lose. Vision goes next. Then the small, boring, preventive things get skipped too. The exact things that catch a problem early and save real money later. Skipped precisely because they cost a little money now. It is a system that punishes you for being careful, then bills you for waiting. So the gap between you and the care you need is not really about distance. It is about money and sometimes about trust. And for millions, that gap has become impossible to close. Here is a fact that sounds like a typo. In no state can a full-time minimum wage worker comfortably rent a plain 2-bedroom. Not a single one. Nowhere. Let me put a hard number on it, because the number is the whole point. To afford a modest 2-bedroom without overpaying, you need a certain wage. About $33.63 an hour. The federal minimum wage is $7.25. It has not moved since 2009. That is not a crack. That is a canyon. Housing researchers have a specific name for paying too much rent. Hand over more than half your income just to stay housed. That has a name. You are severely cost-burdened. That label used to describe a thin edge of the population. People caught in unusual circumstances. Today it fits around 12 million renter households across the country. And here is the piece that surprises people most. A growing share of those losing their grip on housing already have jobs. They show up every single week. They earn a paycheck. By every scoreboard the system keeps, they are doing it right. And a steady roof still slips through their fingers. A few end up sleeping in their cars. Some cycle through weekly motels. They pay more per night than a real lease would cost. But they cannot scrape together a deposit. Some drift between the couches of relatives, housed on paper, with no real ground beneath their feet. What makes this so hard to dismiss is the pace of it. It almost never starts with one clean disaster. It starts with rent going up $150 a month. Then a cut in hours of work. Then a car repair. Then a surprise bill in the mail. Each one feels survivable on its own. But stacked over a few months, they push someone past a line that is brutal to climb back over. So here's the one number worth running tonight. Take your monthly rent. Divide it by your take-home pay. Above 30%, you are strained. Past 50%, you are in the zone where any bump at all can drop you. That is not a lecture. That is just the math. Numbers do not panic. They just tell you the truth. And the truth is where every fix has to start. And knowing exactly where you stand is the first piece of ground you actually get to hold. Because a home is much more than somewhere to sleep. It is the address you write on an application. It is the quiet room where a kid can actually do their homework. It is the base that every long-term plan quietly stands on. Pull it out from under someone, and everything above it starts to wobble at once. If any of this is landing with you, tell me in the comments below. Does it match what you were seeing where you live? Or is your corner of the country holding up better than the picture I am painting? I read them. Now think about needing to get somewhere and simply not being able to. In most cities, getting around is barely a thought. You drive, or grab a bus, or tap an app. It is so automatic you never call it a choice. But step outside the city core for a second. Into the outer suburbs. The small towns. Places designed around a single quiet premise that a working car sits in every driveway. Out there, a car is not a convenience at all. It is the road, the bus, and the safety net rolled into one thing. Picture a warehouse worker in a rural county. Her car has had a transmission problem she has been nursing along for weeks. The fix would run about $1,500. She figured she would set the money aside across the coming weeks. Then, one morning, the engine cranks and quits. Nothing at all. Her shift starts in 3 hours. The warehouse is 18 miles away. No bus connects her part of the county to it. The one rideshare option nearby is unreliable. And it would cost more than the shift even pays. So she misses that shift. Then she misses the next one. While she scrambles to arrange the repair, her employer runs a strict attendance policy. They let her go after the 4th absence. A dead transmission did not just cost her a day of work. It cost her the entire job. Research on transportation shows something that stays hidden from the outside. Tens of millions of people live where transit barely exists, where it is far too thin to actually commute on. That builds a very specific kind of fragility. On the surface, roads exist and cars exist and everything looks like it works fine. Underneath, one breakdown at the wrong moment can start a chain that is genuinely hard to stop. Getting to work needs a car. Reaching a hospital needs a car. Groceries, appointments, almost everything else, all of it needs a car. So the car quietly became the most critical piece of infrastructure a person owns. And freedom, in that very literal sense, is not some grand abstract idea. It is whether the car started this morning. For millions of people, that is not a figure of speech. It is the first thought of the day, before the coffee, before anything. Turn the key. Hold your breath. Let me pause the tour for a second, because a deeper thread runs beneath every one of these. For a long stretch of American life, the deal was simple. Study hard, earn the degree, and reach a level of stability your parents never had. Education was the escalator. You stepped on. You climbed. You rose. And for years, for a lot of people, that actually held true. When the escalator changed, student debt in this country now sits at roughly $1.8 trillion. The typical borrower finishes a 4-year program and still owes somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000. They do not start their adult life at zero. They start it in a hole, not after they have found their feet, but from the very first day. And that debt is anything but abstract. It pushes back the day you can buy a home. It squeezes your choices. It steers you toward whatever pays the monthly note, whether or not it actually fits you. It makes saving for anything else so much harder. It narrows your options at the exact age they should feel widest. There is a quiet anger sitting under all of this, and you can hear it everywhere now. People were sold a straight line. Work, degree, security. Many followed it exactly, and found the line did not lead where the map had promised. The escalator did not just slow down. For a lot of people, it stalled somewhere in the middle. The debt still due, the destination still out of reach. But most people miss where this really begins. It does not begin in college at all. Public schools, kindergarten to 12th grade, run heavily on local property taxes, which means a child's education depends heavily on one thing: the zip code they happen to be born into. Wealthier districts get more money, more seasoned teachers, and stronger support. They get much better preparation for whatever comes next. Poorer districts get less of every one of those things. So the gap does not open with effort or attitude or raw talent. It opens with geography years before anyone picks a major. By the time a young person weighs college, the starting line is already crooked. Then they borrow heavily to try to close that gap. Then they come out the far side with a diploma that may or may not pay enough to service the debt and still build anything solid beneath their feet. The road has not vanished. Diplomas keep getting printed, but the destination it promised is getting harder to reach. A stable adult life that keeps rising. What a lot of young people carry now is not hope. It is a debt that showed up before the first paycheck ever did. And that career itself. There is a common belief that steady work settles the basics. You get to plan ahead. You get to put a little aside. There is solid footing beneath you. For a huge share of the workforce, that assumption quietly stopped being true. Remember the thing I asked you to watch for at the very start? Here is one hard measure of it. Nearly 4 in 10 American adults could not cover a surprise $400 expense. Not with cash on hand. They would have to borrow it. Or sell something. Or not cover it at all. Sit with what that actually reveals. Not the amount. The structure underneath. These are working people. Direct deposits, schedules, bills paid on time. People holding up their end of the whole bargain. And yet the room between their earnings and their costs gets squeezed razor thin. So thin that almost any surprise tips them into crisis. A $700 car repair is not just an annoyance. It is a direct threat to the job that car reaches. A $300 medical bill after insurance is not merely a health cost. It ripples through every other decision that month. Rent climbing $150 is not a market update. It is the start of a math problem that may no longer solve. And here is the sharp point. None of those events are actually rare. Car repairs, doctor bills, rent hikes. These are the routine jolts of an ordinary life. Nobody should call them surprises. This is simply the price of living. The trouble is that the structure underneath can no longer absorb them. The shock absorbers are gone. Now every single bump goes straight through the frame. And if you are wondering how we got here, here is the part the headlines skip past. Over the last few decades, the amount each worker produces kept climbing. People got more efficient. Machines got faster. The value made in a single hour of work went up and up. But that extra value mostly stopped landing in the paycheck. It pooled higher up with the people who own the thing. Not the people who run it. Not the people who buy it. That is the quiet engine sitting under the whole feeling. It is why you can do everything right, work harder than your parents ever did, and still feel like you are jogging backward on a moving belt. You're not imagining it. The floor really did get thinner. And it thinned quietly, one squeeze year at a time. No single moment ever felt like the moment it happened. So if you build one thing this year, build the buffer, not the fancy version. Just a small pool of cash. Its only job is to eat the next bump before it eats you. That one cushion is the difference between a bad week and a broken year. It will not fix the system. It was never going to, but it buys you time. And time keeps a bad month from becoming a lost year. If that landed harder than you thought it would, tap the like button. Tiny gesture. But it helps us reach other people who feel it too. Now jump to the other bookend of a career. Retirement was meant to be the payoff. The season where money pressure finally lifts. You put in your decades. You set aside whatever you managed. You held up your side. And the deal said the system would carry you the rest of the way. For more and more retirees, that bargain quietly stopped paying out. When you retire, your income locks in place. No raise is coming. No overtime to grab. No bonus, no side hustle to lean on when prices rise. But almost nothing around you locks with it. Rent rises. Medical bills rise. Groceries, utilities, the plain cost of existing keeps climbing, while the money coming in sits perfectly still. Studies on older Americans find something grim. Millions of seniors now spend more than half their monthly income on housing. At that level, the room for everything else basically vanishes. Medicine. Food. A bus fare. Any surprise at all. One hospital stay, one dead appliance, one car repair, and whatever thin cushion existed is gone. And here is what really breaks the easy explanation. Many of these older Americans are not people who never planned. They worked steady careers for decades. They tucked away what they realistically could. They fed money into programs they trusted to be there. Then the world simply outran the plan they built. Older adults are now one of the fastest growing groups falling into homelessness. People who at 50 could never have pictured where they would be at 70. One traveler described a street lined with RVs as far as the eye could see, people living inside them. He could not believe it was America. Now, I want to be fair here because the truth has edges. This is not everyone. Some people retire with a pension that holds, or coverage that actually works, or a plan that landed exactly as promised. A veteran with solid benefits. A worker with a real pension. They are out there, and their story counts too. Painting every older American as destitute would be its own kind of lie. But the trend is the trend. And the trend is that doing everything right no longer guarantees a soft landing. When a system stops delivering security in old age, the question gets very simple and very sharp. Was doing everything right actually enough? And that question, it turns out, is spreading well beyond retirement. It is spreading to the future itself. For generations, the idea sitting at the heart of American life was never a fixed guarantee. Not a guarantee of any exact result. It was a direction. The next generation would have it a little better than the last. However hard a given year got, the overall arc still pointed up. Pew Research finds something telling. Today, only about 27% of Americans believe children will end up better off than their parents. Roughly 3 in 4 are now doubted. And not as a mood that flickers in and out. As a firm, deliberate verdict. That matters more than it looks. Here is the thing I told you to watch for right at the start. The first thing that breaks is not the money. It is this. It is the belief a society can carry an enormous amount of hardship, as long as the faith and forward motion stays intact. People push through brutal years when those years feel temporary, when the struggle feels like a rough chapter in a story that is still climbing. That belief is load-bearing. It quietly holds a great many other things up, but when it goes, something underneath gives way. The hardship might stay exactly where it was. The frame around it collapses. And a hard stretch on a rising road becomes something you cannot even put words to. This is the real trap, so see it clearly. The moment you stop believing tomorrow can be better, something happens. You quietly stop doing the things that would make it better. You stop saving, because what is the point? You stop planning because the plan starts to feel like a joke. You stop reaching for care, like the person who decided going without was simpler. The lost faith does the damage that the shortage alone never could. That is exactly why I keep circling back to it. Not because hope is a pleasant idea, because it is a practical tool. It is the thing that keeps your hands moving, and moving is exactly what changes the outcome. So hold the line on that one belief, even when holding it is hard. It is the fuel for every single move that gets you out. So do not hand it over cheaply. Not to the news. Not to a bad month. Not to anyone. Which lands us on food. Because food knots all of this together. It drags the whole thing down to something even more basic than a paycheck. Say the word nutrition and most people think choices. Eat more vegetables. Pick fresh over packaged. Cook whole ingredients instead of boxed ones. And that advice sounds easy because, in a lot of places, it genuinely is. The store is close. The produce aisle is full. The choice is yours. But in millions of communities, that choice does not really exist. Public health officials call these places food deserts. Areas, both urban and rural, with no practical way to reach a full grocery store. No fresh food at a fair price. What they can reach are gas stations, corner stores, dollar stores, and drive-thrus. There is plenty to eat, just nothing a doctor would call a foundation for health. Think of a household over on the south edge of a big city. No car, depending on a bus that comes when it comes. The nearest real supermarket is 6 miles off. The round trip with transfers runs well over an hour. Between a grinding shift and a young kid at home, the trip almost never happens. It is not a weekly errand. It gets made when it can be. So dinner comes together from whatever sits a short walk away. Not for any lack of knowing what would be better. The better choice just is not reachable inside a normal day. The Department of Agriculture confirms that millions of Americans live exactly like this. And here's what makes it stranger still. A lot of these deserts do not sit way out in the countryside. They sit inside major cities, sometimes just a few blocks from a busy commercial strip. Yet fenced off from the delivery networks that keep wealthier zip codes stocked. One woman drove the back roads from Texas into New Mexico. Town after town, the only place to buy anything at all was a dollar store. No fresh vegetables, no fruit, no meat, just cans and frozen boxes. She said it looked like a place after some disaster. Except that people live there, and that is the part that should stop you cold. Not that such places exist, that they exist here, inside the richest economy on Earth. A short drive for miles overflowing with everything. The health toll is not subtle, and it is not up for debate. Where fresh food is hardest to reach, the health bill comes due. Higher rates of obesity, of type 2 diabetes, of high blood pressure. All of it rooted in what people can and cannot eat year after year. Then a loop takes hold and tightens. Poor food access drives worse health. Worse health drives higher medical bills. Higher bills shrink the budget. And a shrunken budget makes the access problem even harder to escape. When a healthy plate hinges on your address, and your address hinges on your income, something breaks. This has moved well beyond personal choice. It has turned into a different question entirely. Who really gets to share in the wealth of one of the richest nations ever built? Now pull back and let it all sit in front of you together. Because this is not a scatter of unrelated failures. It is a single failure showing up under many faces. Water you cannot trust in thousands of communities. Care that exists on paper but not within reach. Fresh food walled off from whole neighborhoods. Transportation gaps that strand people the moment a single car dies. Rent that sprints past paychecks, even for people working full and steady. Retirement plans that no longer hand back the security they once did. A road through school that now starts you off owing tens of thousands. Savings so thin that $400 marks the line between steady and sinking. And under all of it, a belief in the future that is quietly draining away. None of these conditions are brand new. Most have been around in one shape or another for a long stretch. What changed is the pile-up. The way they land on one household all at once. The way a crack in one wall speeds the crack in the next. Picture it all hitting one person in a single season. The transmission dies, so the paycheck stops. The paycheck stops, so the rent slips. The rent slips, so the address goes. And the moment the address goes, everything else gets harder overnight. The job application, the child's school, the doctor who held the file. Not one crisis. 5 of them holding hands. And nobody designed it this way. Nobody sat in a room and planned for these systems to fail together. But they are failing together anyway. And the same families are absorbing every single piece of it at once. This country is staggeringly rich. That has not changed. But a rich nation does not hand each person stability by default. There is a gap here between everything the nation generates and what a single household actually lives day to day. That gap is the real story buried under all the others. The old promise was never complicated. Work hard, show up, take part, and the system will catch you. Support will be waiting the moment you need it. For more and more people, it is quietly buckling. No single dramatic collapse. No sudden moment. Nothing that ever lands on a front page. It shows up in the smallest moments instead. The glass of water you pause before drinking. The appointment you keep pushing off. The grocery run you cannot quite make. The apartment you are fighting to hold. The retirement that looks nothing like the plan. The future you are no longer sure you can trust. But remember what breaks first. Not the water, not the rent, not the $400. The belief. And that is the one piece you still get to hold on purpose, even now. So run the numbers on your own life. Not to scare yourself, just to see the ground clearly. Build the one small buffer that eats the next bump before it eats you. Hold on to the plan even when the frame feels shaky, because the plan is the one thing they cannot quietly take. The foundation is shifting. That much is real. But you're not powerless standing on top of it. You can see it now. And seeing it clearly is where the ground stops moving. So let me leave you with the question I have been circling this whole time. Of everything we walked through today, which one hit closest to your own front door? Tell me. I genuinely want to know where the line runs for you.